Welcome to another episode of ABC. Pretty sure it's already, we were streaming, it was muted. All right, ladies and gentlemen, grab yourself some tacos, get yourself a beer or some sparkling water, and find your happy ass to a seat, because we're about to kick this thing off. Michael, you want to make some announcements about your Bitcoin miner raffle and some other things?
Yes. Yeah, give me 1 second.
He does, but he's busy playing on his computer like every other Bitcoiner. Bunch of nerds. All right. So, how many of you have never been to it? I see like a lot of new faces tonight. How many of you have never been to an ABC before? All right. Probably more than half the room. That's wild. Thanks for coming. How many of you are new to Austin? Okay. A good chunk of the room. Man, it keeps getting better to be a Bitcoiner in Austin. Welcome to the community. Thanks for coming out. Michael, you ready to talk about your raffle?
Yeah, let's do it. So Kaboomracks was kind enough to donate an Antminer S9. It's a great little starter miner. So we're selling raffle tickets. I wouldn't really say selling. All the proceeds are going to be going to support open source development via OpenSats. So whenever you buy a raffle ticket, you're actually donating. At the end of the evening, we're going to raffle that thing off, and live, we're just going to send some sats over to OpenSats, which is a not-for-profit, Bitcoin donation platform. So get your tickets whenever. You got all evening.
Also, Simon is obviously in the room. Okay, so beyond that, if you decide to get rid of some of those sats for OpenSats, and some of those sats were KYC sats, we can help you tonight and every day moving forward to sell you some better sats, some KYC free sats. Pleb Lab is now teamed up with Azteco, so if you guys are in Austin, and if you're ever looking for KYC-free Bitcoin, we're the place to go. We can hook you up. We're going to bring it to ABC. We'll probably bring it to the other meetups around town, but if you guys are ever looking to get yourself some non-KYC Bitcoin, you just hit us up. We'll sell you some. What's the name? It's an Azteco device, but if you're looking to get it from us, you can just find us at Pleb Lab on Twitter.
Yeah, so effectively tonight, you can literally walk up to him and say, hey, here's $10 in cash, and he'll give you $10 in Bitcoin.
You give me funny money, I give you non-KYC
so that you can get some
Bitcoin.
raffle tickets.
Yeah, he's got some cash. I'm ready to go. I'll give you a little voucher. You get some Bitcoin. I get some toilet paper. It's a good trade for you. It's a terrible trade for me. But we do it because we love you, and that's what we're all about here at ABC and Pleb Lab. So I guess with that being said, I'm going to make kind of one last announcement tonight, and then we will get the show fully started. So me and my buddy Carr here started Austin Bitcoin Club. Boy, I guess we're coming up on almost a year now. And when we started this thing, we kind of knew that this was really for the community. It was meant to be a community thing. It was never meant to be our thing. We knew a while back that eventually we would find somebody to pass the torch and to kind of take over the mantle of running Austin Bitcoin Club. So tonight, the official announcement is me and Carr are no longer the men behind the scenes. We are no longer running the Austin Bitcoin Club. We are, yeah, we're going to launch another club. We're not going anywhere, man. But Austin Bitcoin Club is yours. And honestly, the man we're passing it off to, we couldn't be more humbled and proud to be a friend of his. So he's going to run the show for a while. The only kind of thing I asked of him was when the time was right, I asked him to do the same thing and pass the torch on once again. We want to keep this thing growing and evolving. And yeah, that's what we're looking to do with Austin Bitcoin Club. It's not supposed to be one person's or one group of people's. It's the communities. So if you show up and you support this thing and you be a part of the community, who knows, maybe you'll be running it one day. So for now, I'm going to pass it over to Michael, and I'm going to say, see you next time. Michael Atwood, along with your, so it's Yeah. So it's going to be 3 people. The new team running the show is going to be our good friend Michael Atwood, his wife Erica, and he's around here somewhere. Our good friend Logan. There he is. He's back there. So that's the new team, and they'll be around. So hopefully this thing gets even better. I have a feeling it will.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kyle, Carr, everyone. This is like the George Washington moment where he's like, look, I could run this thing forever, but I got to pass it on. So, yeah, very honored. And if anybody's looking to help and contribute, because that's what this thing is all about, reach out to me. We'll find something for you to do, something that you'd want to do. So, all right. So tonight we have a pretty special meetup. We're going to do a how-to on setting up this little guy right here, this Antminer S9, how to mine from home. Nick's going to help us out with that. Then we're going to have a mining panel with some awesome people from the Austin area. And so that'll be interesting. So first, do a little housekeeping here as usual. So make sure you're registered on meetup.com. If you aren't already, just so you can stay up to date, so you don't miss the meetups. It's really good. And additionally, there is a Round Rock Bitcoin meetup. So if you're coming from North Austin, next Thursday at 6 p.m. in Round Rock, you can check out a meetup there. And I highly recommend everyone in here, like if you think you could or are even remotely interested in starting a Bitcoin meetup in one of the Austin suburbs here, start one. Post it on Meetup, like Round Rock. Yeah, Jason. Yeah, there's Jason right there. He's manning the ticket today. He's doing the Round Rock one. So make sure you show up and let's get this thing going all over Austin. Bitcoin Plus Plus is a developers conference and hackathon that's going to be taking place June 7th in conjunction. Pleb Lab and Base 58 are putting that on. And we're actually going to be giving away a ticket today as well, compliments of Galoy, which is the kind of infrastructure responsible for the Bitcoin Beach wallet. That was kind of their proof of concept. So they provide Bitcoin kind of community banking services, open source. So if you are a developer, or especially if you're a developer that do not yet have your BTC++ conference ticket, find us, or we should have like a form going around. You can write your name and we're going to give the ticket away at the end of the evening. So make sure you do that. Special thanks to Bitcoin Commons for hosting us in this awesome room here. And, they're very giving to the community here. Make sure you follow them on Twitter and of course, Unchained Capital, who sponsor the drinks and the tacos. Yeah, give them a round of applause. They do a lot for the community, and they have some kick-ass financial services. So if you need some help holding your Bitcoin or leveraging your Bitcoin, make sure you reach out to them. All right, so I think tonight, how many people, is this your first Bitcoin meetup? Raise your hand, please. Okay, you guys are like lining the front row. All right, hell yeah. You're like, I got to get a front row seat for this. Cool. So I was thinking about, just doing a really quick, like flash of the news, recent news, and some of it pertains to mining. We're not going to do a deep dive, but I figure this is like a great way to maybe do like some pseudo Bitcoin 101, insert that in as much as we can just to get like kind of the lay of the land. So it's just going to be really quick. And also, if someone wants to come up here and join me for this, like, come on up. Don't be shy. We're just going to go over some quick news. Feel free. And if not, that's okay too. All right. We'll get Matt up here. Here, Matt. Matt Dono.
Hey, everybody.
All right. So, Stacker News here. It's a really cool thing. It's like Reddit, except you get Bitcoin instead of upvotes. So it's really cool. So people like post things on here. So I just have some articles here pulled up, and I can actually sit here and I can be like, oh, hey, like I like this. So, I'm like going to give like 100 sats to this user who posted this cipher poet. Boom, he just gets 100 sats. So it's really cool, value for value. But let's take a look at this. So recently, the ECB has been printing a lot of money, as well as all central banks all over the world. I think it would be wise just to take a look at this this clip here today. It was from last week. Is the sound gonna come through here, Car? Maybe it won't. Yeah, we'll see. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Oh, really? It's coming out of that TV. Okay, so yeah, that's not going to work. So basically, they asked her, like, how does she sleep at night knowing that effectively, like, the ECB balance sheet has gone through the roof? And, she's like, oh, well, of course I sleep at night and I wake up in the morning and I'm worried and I did what I had to do and all that. But yeah,
The follow-up question was, how are you going to reduce the balance sheet? And her answer was, it will come down in due time. Anyone else feel the confidence in that answer? Who says, oh man, what a great set of people to manage my money? Lucky us.
Yeah, so, it's pretty wild. Again, this is just like a flash news thing. We're not going to go too in depth on that, but it is interesting that the people who are controlling the money supply are like, oh yeah. I mean, I don't know how or why or what's going to happen, but like, don't worry, it'll be fine. Simon.
Michael, just a question. What does it mean for the ECB's balance sheet to go up by like 8 trillion or something like that? I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
What does it mean, like the balance sheet of the ECB going up?
Yeah, so Parker would probably be best to explain this, but effectively it means that they printed a shit ton of money. And what that does is that devalues the people who hold the euro in this case. It's going to devalue their currency so that the ECB can print money and basically, in one form or another, give it to government bankers so that they can rescue the economy. But yeah, that's like classic Cantillon effect where, they benefit the most, the people who are closest to that, flood of money, and the people that are furthest away from it benefit the least or are actually negatively impacted greatly by that. Yeah. So, then we had Janet Yellen, and she's basically like, look, I was wrong. I don't know. I was just so wrong about inflation, and I don't know. We could have never foreseen this, right? And while we're here, I just want to highlight, I just want to see this little article and I just get hit with 50 different advertisements. Bitcoin fixes this too. We'll probably talk about that a little bit on the next meetup, but it's just crazy. But anyway, she's like, I was wrong about the path inflation would take. Well, all of us, what did they call us?
Who could have guessed?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you print trillions of dollars, how could this have happened, right? So, in other news, there were 44 central bankers that came to El Salvador this past week to effectively discuss Bitcoin.
So the highlight on that one is 44 different countries sent representatives to El Salvador to ask, how is it going? El Salvador converted Bitcoin to legal tender and has moved a substantial portion of their treasury into Bitcoin. So everyone kind of said, hey, you've been doing this for a couple of months now. What's it like? How's it working? What are the benefits? And the great part is we now have countries orange pilling other countries. So before it was us, we had to go out there, shake people's hands and say, would you take my Bitcoin for goods and services? Now other countries are doing it to other countries. Maybe there's a gentleman in the room who knows a little bit about gradually then suddenly. This is maybe closer to the suddenly part than we might expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Great summary. And Galloy, again, they were kind of the proof of, they were the infrastructure and created the proof of concept, the Bitcoin Beach wallet that effectively orange pilled an entire country of El Salvador to make it legal tender. They said central bankers were definitely not coming to El Salvador to discuss Bitcoin. They were, and they learned a lot about it. And the thing, to piggyback off what Matt said, is it is incredibly empowering for people that have never had access to financial services because they're outside of the financial system. they never had access to digital payments before. Now they can simply download a wallet and they can send and receive Bitcoin and, you know, transact digitally for the first time ever, sending it to anyone, anywhere in the world. That's pretty crazy. And additionally, like, they can't buy Apple stock or Google stock or any of that stuff, but now they have access to Bitcoin, which is, you know, the best performing asset of the past decade. That is also in history. That is also really profound, and the effects of that are slowly starting to permeate into the minds of other countries. Now, hey, central bankers are going to central bank and central plan, but getting them to use it and getting them exposed to it it's good for Bitcoin at the end of the day. All right, what else we got here? So getting into a little bit of mining stuff. We'll get more into this later. Again, I just wanted this to be a brief thing. Also, I just want to post this here. So Kenya's largest power provider to offer geothermal energy to Bitcoin miners. And the main takeaway here is that this is excess energy that's not being consumed. So Bitcoin miners can swoop in and they can utilize that energy and, you know, profit off of it. And the energy company can actually make money off of energy that they were never using anything for. So that's like 14,000 megawatts, which is about 14 gigawatts. So that's just an interesting tidbit there. And additionally, you know, you have oil companies in the Middle East that are now using a company called Crusoe Energy. It's a Denver-based Bitcoin mining company. So they're helping them deploy equipment to take advantage of flared gas. So gas, it's a byproduct of the oil mining. And instead of just flaring it and burning it, you can actually use that energy and cut back on like methane emissions and mine Bitcoin with it, right? So again, pretty interesting there. You know, honestly, I don't have much to say about this. The White House is crafting
the White
a Bitcoin.
House is thinking about maybe doing something at some point. Lucky us.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Exactly. You know, they're like, oh, you know, Bitcoin mining just uses all this energy and we really need to find a way to do a better job about that. And I really like this comment by Nerd to Ninja. So, you know, let's give him like 1,000 sats. He goes, lowering Bitcoin's energy consumption is literally an attempt to hack at Bitcoin's security. But because Bitcoin mining is so modular, it won't work. So what he's saying is like, the energy that Bitcoin consumes also adds to the security of the network. Okay, so like saying, oh, Bitcoin shouldn't use this much energy. I mean, in a way, that's like going to take away from the security of the network and they're talking about proof of stake, like that's effectively already what we have. And additionally, if they just make it difficult to mine here, then miners will go elsewhere anyway. Right. And I'm sure we'll get into at least a little bit of this on the panel and they could speak much more to it than I can. Something I found funny here, the Winklevoss twins are laying off 10% of its staff, right? Saying the crypto winter is here. Go ahead.
I'm very excited it's a crypto winter and not a Bitcoin winter. Does anyone else feel like it's Bitcoin winter? Raise your hands. Fantastic.
Things are being built. What's that?
Yeah. 12 years. We're 12 years in the Bitcoin bull market, guys.
That's right. So Simon says 12 years in the Bitcoin bull market. And somebody says, what is this? Craig on Bitcoin. He goes, hey, looks like it's time to close the casino. Right. So let's give them some stats. Considering I would say most of their business model is the casino, I'm expecting them to cut more than 10% of their staff, but what do I know? So let's get a little bit of this real quick. Who funds Bitcoin development? There was a really cool thing posted here. Looks like Spiral, the Human Rights Foundation, BitMEX, what is this? OKCoin? So open source development, the thing about that, and again, people can speak more to this than I can, but open source development, people are doing this for free, right? So, that's somewhat of a problem. They're taking time out of their lives, which could otherwise be spent working for, say, some like big corporation making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And some people are really just taking this time and contributing to open source projects so that we can become more free and self-sovereign. So some companies are really stepping up and they're starting to, pay these people,
And some companies are also doing reoccurring donations or reoccurring grants, which is almost equally as important, right? Because it's nice if someone puts up a bug bounty and are able to solve it. But some stuff is just not sexy. Like reviewing someone else's code is way less fun than writing your own. One's building, one's double checking someone else's math problem. But if you have a reoccurring donation that says, hey, every month, every year, we're going to keep funding your time, your effort, all of a sudden reading someone else's homework and checking for errors is now a paid for position rather than, man, I have some free time. I'd love to contribute it. Do I write my own or do I go back and double check? So I'm super excited to see people getting credit for their donations, but also doing donations in a way better way than just, I don't know what to do. Let's just give it to everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a great segue into OpenSats, right? So OpenSats supports open source Bitcoin contributors or just open source projects in general. So it's an easy way for people to donate to these projects. That is who we are donating to tonight. How much have we gotten so far, Jason? It's probably not a whole lot. Ballpark? $120. 100. We got to pump those numbers up,
If
guys.
you would like to win a miner or many other.
Yeah, probably like $300 is what that's going for. So, I mean, I think after Nick comes up here in a few and we go through, there he is, we go through this thing, I think you guys will maybe be a little more interested. But that's who it's going to. Once again, thanks to Kaboomracks. You can buy, source, procure miners from them, all sorts of different miners. So you can check them out. But I think let's get into it, Nick. So do you want to unplug this and plug it back in, or we'll just do it at the end? All right. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Sorry, you wanted a handshake.
Give her a round of applause.
I can probably just hold it. Okay. I don't think I have to type.
All right. So Nick has been gracious enough with his time. He's going to walk us through how to set up a Bitcoin miner. Should I give a little backstory on this?
Yeah.
So
Talk
what-
about
was it-
yeah.
Was it? Well, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk it. So basically, I moved to Austin like 2 months ago. I think a lot of people here, represent.
Let's go.
And Michael over here hosts a really cool event called, what do you call it?
Bitcoin breakfast.
Bitcoin Breakfast. So I just met him at Bitcoin Breakfast one morning, and we just got to talking and became friends. And I've never mined before. I'm just a pleb. I'm actually a software engineer by trade, working at Galloy, which is another funny story about Bitcoin Breakfast. But Bitcoin Breakfast actually got me a job in Bitcoin too. So I was able to quit my fiat job a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that are like, man, I want to work in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What would you say? What's the secret?
Oh, I think Kyle said it best on Marty Bent's podcast. Just show up. Like everyone's doing it right now. Just show up. Like good things will probably happen, most likely, if you do the work.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so at the Bitcoin Breakfast, we just got to talking about like Bitcoin mining, and I've never done it before, and I thought it was cool. And he's like, "Oh, I have 2 S9s that I'm not using right now. I can't plug them in." So I'm like, "Oh." He's like, "Do you want one?" I'm like, "I live in an apartment." I'm like, "I don't know if I can mine at home. Like, won't it be too loud? Won't it be too hot?" You know, you hear those stories that they just, suck the energy out. I didn't want to be the guy that like burnt his apartment building down and like everyone hates me and then make Bitcoin look bad. But, Michael explained that there's, a cool OS you can actually run on the S9 called Braiins, which shout out to Braiins. I think they sponsor the Commons. So, but anyway, so he gave me the miner and I just went home and I set it up. So I thought I would give a demo on how to do that. I think is this our first demo we've done at one of these before?
I think so. Yeah, this thing is running. This is live, guys. This thing's running,
Yeah,
baby.
it's running live. Like if you want to come up and look at it and like touch
Later,
it, there's not a whole lot of heat coming out of here. It's not much more than a hair dryer. We're running it underpowered right now, 700 watts. So we're definitely not running it at full capacity. But it's can you in the back? Can you even hear the miner back there? Yeah, so you can You could run it at home if you've got a girlfriend or a wife. They probably won't be too mad at you. They'll probably let you, not sleep on the couch. But anyways, yeah. So that's the topic of this demo is pleb mining at home. And I'm by no means an expert at this, so correct me, anybody. I know there's experts here. We got GigaChad here, so correct me if any of my stuff is wrong. But anyways, here's the device right here. And what I did at my apartment, I set it up actually in my laundry room on top of my washing machine, or actually on top of my dryer. And again, you can run it without venting it out the window if you underpower it. But it was I live in like a small, like 700 square foot apartment. So I basically wanted to vent it out. So I bought this little, if you look at the picture, this little, vent right here. I just vented out through my dryer vent. You can buy a little adapter. Just Google like S9 to dryer vent. If you're going to run it like hotter, you probably want a bigger pipe to vent. But if you're running it at 700 watts, this works perfectly fine. So now I'm going to get into the demo, a live demo. Let's see if it works. So the first thing you're going to want to do is select a pool. And I just chose SlushPool just because Braiins, they're kind of the same company, I think. So the first thing you want to do is create a new SlushPool account. So I've got SlushPool open here. And I've already got this miner configured, but I'm going to go step by step on how you would do this from scratch by yourself. So the first thing you want to do is you want to add your Bitcoin wallet, one of your addresses to SlushPool. So if you go over to the funds tab here, we're going to go over to wallets and we're going to say add new wallet. All right. So what you want to do is you want to get your own Bitcoin address. Again, it's not your keys, not your coin. Make sure you have a hardware wallet and you have your own keys. So I'm using Spectre wallet right here. It's one of my favorite wallets. We use it on the back end at Galloy for some kind of a multi-sig configuration, but right now I just have it configured as a single key. So just grab the address, BC1, and then you can just name your wallet and paste it there. We're obviously doing Bitcoin. We don't do shit coins. All right, so step number 2. So now you want to actually create a payout schedule. So let's go back to SlushPool, and we're going to go to Funds, Overview, Add New Account. So Funds, Overview, Add New Account. So you can name your account whatever you want. Let's just call it Test 2. And choose Bitcoin as your currency. And the next step you want to do is you actually want to do a payout schedule. So what this means is after a certain amount of time, when you mine enough Bitcoin, they actually send to your Bitcoin address. And I don't think they're doing lightning payouts yet.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, not yet. Hopefully, eventually they'll get that connected. Maybe you can get paid out.
And you can also
quicker.
set the threshold to like an actual like amount of Bitcoin. So like every 0.0001 or every 0.01 or whatever, then you can have it automatically sent to your on-chain address.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've got more miners, you run them more powerful, you're going to get more payouts, obviously. So you could set a bigger threshold, but for now you can just do like a time interval. You could do it, maybe weekly or monthly based on, whatever day you want. All right. So the next step is to create a worker. So typically, if you're running like a huge mining farm, like GigaChad over there, you're gonna have a lot of miners, a lot of workers. We just have one ASIC running in my laundry room, so I just have one lonely worker. I'm just a pleb. Yeah, so sad. So let's go to SlushPool and let's go to mining, and then workers, and let's connect a worker. Did I do that right? Yes. So this is where you can choose your location. So they have, I think, data centers around the world. I'm just going to use general. Obviously we could use US East Coast. And the next thing you do is you choose your mining protocol. This version of the S9 had Braiins OS pre-installed. So I think it only supports Stratum version 1 and not version 2. which I'm not super versed on Stratum version 2. I know it gives more independence to miners. I believe you can choose the transactions to include as an individual as opposed to the mining pool. Correct me if I'm wrong, people who actually know about mining.
I believe that is correct. Yeah.
And I think Spiral, or what are they called now? Spiral, I think they wrote a lot of that code. Matt Corello, I think. But anyways, I didn't upgrade the firmware because I'm just a pleb. So let's just choose Stratum version 1. And you want to record down these connection addresses and your username and password there, because we're going to actually configure our machine in a second here. We're going to remote into it and configure that.
Because effectively, you just have to let the pool know that, hey, this miner that's mining at my house is going to be associated with this particular payout schedule that we did and all that, this particular pool.
Exactly. So that's pretty much all you need to do on SlushPool. So the next thing you would do, we've already powered the machine on. It's a little bit loud when it first powers up because I think it goes at full wattage and then it powers down to the 700 watts that we configured. We'll show you how loud it is once we plug it in later. But all you do is you plug in an Ethernet cable to your wireless router. I've got a little Netgear running around the corner. You can't see that there. But typically what you do is you need to find the IP address of it. So if you run a Netgear router, you can actually go to routerlogin.net. If not, it's typically like 192.168.1.1 or 254 or 10.0, you know the things. But anyways, you can see that we've got something called miner on the network, and it's got an IP address of 10.0.0.5. So this will actually allow us to remote into that machine on our local network. So let's do that now. So I typed in the IP address, I'm logged in. There's a default username and password that you have to punch in, but I already did that. So now that we're remoted in, we need to configure this machine to talk to SlushPool. So let's grab those connection strings we had before for the workers. We've got this thing here. Let's go to Braiins, running locally. Then you go to miner and then configuration. And this is the first thing you configure here is this pool groups. So you would paste that right here. I've already done that. And then you would also paste in the user ID and the password there. If anybody watches The Big Lebowski, that's my little handle, just my little burner account I've got here. So, all right, so we did that. So the next step you can do, there's a lot of different configurations you can do in here. And Michael probably knows better than me because he had this pre-configured. But the setting that we're concerned about since we're pleb mining at home is we don't want it to run full power because that would be really loud. It would sound like a cyber hornet. I know there's Kaylee has a cool sweatshirt over there. But anyways, we want to power it down. So we just chose 700 watts. I think they originally run at what, 1300 watts?
Yeah, I think stock is about 1300. You can overclock them or something, but yeah, you'd have to have some cooling or immersion cooling or something.
Yeah. And I'm no expert. I literally right before this I googled like how many watts like a standard plug can do just so I didn't sound like a pleb. But anyways, yeah, it's powered down, so it's not very powerful.
Yeah, and some people may be wondering why do you have to connect to a pool? What is the purpose of a pool? So a pool basically allows you to pool your hash rate. I think SlushPool has about 10% of the total hash rate. So whenever SlushPool mines a block, let's say you contributed 0.00001% of the hash power to that block that was mined, then you're going to get a payout for that. So just to set a bit of a perspective here, this is one miner, okay? Chad has 64,000 of them, okay? But the thing is, that's just that doesn't even begin to do it justice. We're talking there are so much hash power. What's that? Oh yeah. There is so much hash power out there. You're never gonna mine a block with this thing, so you need to pull together.
Yeah, we're just plebs, but
yeah,
all of us plebs together, we're big, really big.
One day there's going to be a pleb pool.
Yeah,
for sure,
pleb pool, exactly. So yeah, once you do that, you can hit save, And then the next thing you want to do is make sure that you're actually connected to your pool. So if you go to miner configuration, you can see that our pool status is alive. We've got a green check mark that we all love on our Lightning wallets when the payment goes through. So this is good. This means our miner is connected out to SlushPool. We're communicating. And the next thing, we've got this nice little dashboard here. This shows basically your hash rate. So I bet some of the real miners out there laughing at, we're doing 7.9 terahash a second, which is it's a pleb amount, but it's an honest day's work. And the chip is running pretty low, 85 degrees Celsius. It's not hot. Like, we're not getting burned over here. So that is the dashboard. And the next part is the fun part. Yay, non-KYC sats. So this will happen every time SlushPool mines a block. You can actually go to the SlushPool, I think the dashboard. Where does that show?
Are you looking for
rewards?
Like the
Yes, that's what we want. That's what we care about, rewards. So you can see here, I've had this plugged in before. I've mined, $12 worth of Bitcoin. But you can see every block that SlushPool mines, we get a little bit of payout. I've got two satoshis off of that block. that is pleb mining right there. But over time, this adds up. I'm just one pleb. Hopefully this will be recorded and maybe people will buy or win that raffle. And, if we get everybody in this room mining, that's pretty powerful. We can, kind of take some of the decentralization back, to the Bitcoin, hash rate and the power of pooling.
Yeah, just real quick. So no KYC. That means KYC is know your customer. So typically to interface with any sort of, at least to buy Bitcoin from the standard, places, the exchanges, you're going to have to give your ID and all this stuff. And generally, like, KYC doesn't particularly work. It's just adding risk to you as an individual whenever the exchange or whatever inevitably gets hacked and leaks your data. And doesn't really stop the criminals from getting around these things anyway. That's just the high level. But furthermore, it's just really nice to be able to trade electricity in your home by paying your electricity bill for Bitcoin. Bitcoin that nobody has to know about. Like, not because you have something to hide. It's just privacy. Privacy is a human right. Like, you should just have privacy. If I hand you a $5 bill, do I have to report that to the government? Well, the government maybe thinks so. But, in general, like, if you're just sitting here, like, trading, you hand your friend $5, like, no one's going to report that. You can mine Bitcoin in your own home and, like, no one has to know. You feel free to report it. But I'm just saying, you don't have to risk giving all your personal information to a third party that is inevitably going to have it leaked.
Yeah, I use my miner as a hairdryer. So, I'm not actually mining. It's actually a nice hairdryer.
Yeah, you put a burner wallet on there. Like, you don't even have access to that wallet. It's
just that's my hairdryer account on SlushPool.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you're like, how much does this cost to run per month, running, at 700 watts? It's not that much money. I live in Austin, so I think I get like 8 cents a kilowatt hour for my first, or 8 cents. Yeah. For the first, like, 500. So we get a pretty decent rate on energy here in Texas. Like, we're kind of lucky with the ERCOT grid. But, I think this thing mines like $1 or $2 a day. It might use $2 or $3 of energy, which it's non-KYC Bitcoin, so you might not be breaking even today, but zoom out to the long run, it's definitely worth it in the long run. So
yeah, there was a time not too long ago where you could, like, they were practically giving these things away. Whenever the price of Bitcoin was like 3,000, they were literally, please take them off of our hands. We will ship a truckload to them. Just get them out. And then we had this, this bull run, right? And these things became very, very, well, pretty way profitable than they were. And then they were going for $500. So from giving them away to $500, and of course, then the next generation miners maybe reached a peak of around like $14,000 per unit or $15,000 per unit. So that's just something interesting to consider. But maybe Mitch can speak a little bit to that later on, but I don't want to get too much into that.
Yeah, I think that's it. So that's pleb mining at home.
Oh yeah, give a round of applause, guys. So I hope some of you are like interested in plugging one of these into your own home. We got the raffle tickets going to a good cause. Try to win one. So we'll take like maybe a 15-minute break here, and then we'll have the panel. So mingle, talk about mining, donate some sats. We'll be back soon. So let's wind down, grab your drink or whatever, and let's slowly, we're going to get this panel kicked off. Oh, that's like the quietest everyone's gotten like ever, I think. You guys must really want to hear this. I think right now we're probably up to about $300 on the raffle. So thank you guys so much. Oh no. Oh yeah, we're gonna do it at the end. So you can go up there, talk to Jason whenever. We'll do like a last call after the panel, and then we'll raffle it off. So yeah, let's invite everyone up. So we have Chad. He's the CEO founder of Whinstone. Yeah, hold it.
No. I'm the executive vice president and chief commercial officer of Riot Blockchain.
Thank you.
As of this week.
Maybe I should just have you guys introduce yourselves. We'll just have them introduce themselves. Yeah, wherever you want, Parker. Wherever you want. We have another chair for you over there too. We'll get you guys over there. Yeah. So this is it's not a fireside chat, it's a miner side chat.
Yeah, somebody's gonna get warm.
Yeah, it probably feels good. It's a little chilly. Wherever, yeah. Test. Yep.
Yeah.
Weird looking mic.
Yeah.
Test.
All right. So, okay. I really just want to start off because it's on the top of my mind here. We have one S9 here. Okay, one S9. Chad, how many S9s did you start with?
I started with one S9 in, I think I turned it on December 29th, 2017. I went from 1 to 3 to 6 to 33 to 100 to 600 to 5,000. Then I went to Rockdale. Yeah.
What happened at Rockdale, Chad?
Yeah. But I think what's really important is differently that anyone can do what I did. Any one of you. I was broke. I had no money. I had to raise capital. I had to sell my soul, give 99.9% up of everything I had, risk everything. And I did. I signed a letter for some company that loaned me the money that said, when I go bankrupt, like literally, it's like, when you go bankrupt, you will work for us until you pay us back. I'm like, sure, I'll sign anything. And so I think that's what most people don't do.
I was just going to say, not everybody can do that.
Yeah, most people won't sleep on a couch for 17 months in your office and refuse to go home because I didn't want to be comfortable.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm a bad moderator. So we have the vice president of...
I'm the executive vice president, now chief commercial officer of Riot Blockchain.
Got it, because Riot acquired Whinstone about a year ago, correct?
Riot acquired Whinstone on May 26th of 2021.
All right. Now, Mitch, if you want to do a little introduction of yourself here.
So I'm a mining analyst at Compass Mining. Just do research and write and do some content as well for Compass. So.
Go, Mitch. So humble. Let's go.
I'm Parker Lewis. I'm the head of business development at Unchained Capital and help organize the Bitcoin Commons.
Hell yeah.
And I'm Michael Schultz, and I am CEO and co-founder of Lion Shield BTC, trying to work my way up to being like Chad here.
All right. So I really just kind of want to start with you, Chad, because I find I think we really need to take a little bit deeper dive into your story. And again, what's at the top of my mind is the recent event in Rockdale, Texas, about an hour northeast of here, right? Where the Whinstone facility is located, and kind of let's say the economic impact on the community and what you guys are trying to do through mining currently.
You know, it's interesting that a lot of times if you ever hear me talk, I talk about Bitcoin as a widget. I always say, put the widget on the side. Let's not talk about it for a minute. And because you have to scroll back in your head in 2018 when I went to Rockdale and I convinced these people, I convinced Alcoa to provide a lease. I didn't have all the criteria necessary, and I had spent more time trying to convince people that we actually could accomplish it. And I decided along the way that if I just stopped talking about Bitcoin and I started talking about the things that actually people cared about, and I know that sounds funny when I say that in front of all of you, but it was job creation, sales tax revenue, economic impact, and future community improvement. And I only focused on that, and two things came from it. The greatest personal, feelings of watching people's careers change, doing things in a community where, playgrounds didn't have lights. And I was like, well, lights can't be that much, right? How come you don't have lights? Fixing dog shelters, buying the police department's canine to find the elderly that get lost, because that's a problem in rural Texas. They don't have the resources to have canines that find missing people. Like having the opportunity to do the things, and I always say, then I go, let's go back to the widget for a second. Bitcoin did that. Like if you don't like it, or you don't understand it, or you can't get your head around, or it's like, imaginary money. Well, Bitcoin did all of those things. And then I started noticing that the more that I thought about it for a second, is like, a kilowatt is created of energy and it evaporates in a nanosecond if it's not used. And Bitcoin is the only thing that takes an electron and stores it and gives it a stored value for the future. And so the people that are, I have a whole fan club called the Chad Harris Haters Club, because we use so much energy and we do all these bad things. And I'm always like, we're the only ones that are actually storing energy that you can use at a later date that has value in the end. And so I think those things are really important.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And I want to segue, taking that energy, that jewel of energy, right? The proof of work. Work requires energy. Ain't nothing free. Like, ain't nothing free, okay? Whether they want you to believe it or not, it requires work. And like Parker, maybe we can talk a little bit about high level proof of work, Bitcoin mining, the value of that.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that probably about a year ago, I was driving down to Houston and was just going down for a meeting and decided, hey, we're going to kind of help blow up the Houston Bitcoin meetup, because Houston's the energy capital of the world and energy is core to securing the Bitcoin network. But energy is also strategic to Texas. And that when I think about kind of proof of work at the highest level, a lot of times the Chad Harris Haters Club, where they see a 700 megawatt mine and they say, hey, we're just wasting all this energy. And there's a certain cohort of people that will say, oh, actually Bitcoin's green. But more realistically, it's that people take money for granted and they take energy for granted. And that through the last 12 months of going down and helping host the Houston Bitcoin meetup and engaging more with the mining community, started to gain a much greater appreciation for just how complex energy is. And that I think the proper response on the Bitcoin side is that if people don't understand why Bitcoin is valuable or why someone would need a form of money that can't be printed, they will never understand the energy or the justification for the energy that secures the Bitcoin network. But then if you go down to the level of producing energy, extracting natural resources out of the ground, converting it to power, that in itself is a very complex problem. We all take that for granted. So I think people on the Bitcoin side that start to understand Bitcoin as money, many people, I personally did, but probably most people in this room take it for granted how this room is powered. And that problem I started talking about, as I was getting into this, about how Bitcoin can help stabilize the market. But then I started to appreciate that Bitcoin can actually help stabilize the grid. And that grid stability is actually a highly complex problem. And that, Chad did a video, I think it was yesterday, talking about how Riot was going to be shutting down when ERCOT which is the operator of the Texas grid, needed it or required it. And that when you think about how energy demand troughs and spikes, that shutting down a massive power plant is a big ordeal, hugely or seriously inefficient. And that if you have a firm like Riot that can take 700 megawatts and growing on a 24/7 basis, that it's absorbing all excess energy and then being able to offload that where there are more acute needs or as there are more acute needs. And so I think that the harmony, obviously, between Bitcoin and its energy component are obvious to the Bitcoin folks, but I think there still is not as great of an appreciation for just how large of a problem Bitcoin helps solve in the energy world. And that as more people do, they will gain a greater and greater appreciation for both money and energy and the symbiotic nature and relationship between the two.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's something, again, that isn't fully well understood. So from like an industrial perspective, like large scale industrial mining operation, the effects they can have on the grid are like profound. And now, Mitch, I'll kind of loop you in here. So Compass does like hosted mining. So like anybody can mine, right? And there's like some caveats to that, but effectively Bitcoin mining from like an energy perspective, but then there's also the perspective of like securing the network, like distributing the hash rate or having it to where, people are mining, even if they're not like a big organization, a big company. And then from that aspect, I know you've kind of talked a bit about how the Bitcoin miner is almost like a real estate. It's almost like the real estate because it can generate cash flows. If you want to kind of touch a bit on that.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think the idea that Michael was just talking about is comparing like Bitcoin mining as like an investment sort of thing. So if you're taking and you're comparing it to whether you're putting money into real estate or you're going to put money into Bitcoin miners, you're purchasing real estate. Real estate is the asset, and then there's cash flow if you're renting out your real estate. You're renting out your home, you get rent as a cash flow. So miner is like an asset in a way, but actually reduces over time. But it's still worth something at the end. And then as well, you have cash flow at the end. So you have cash flow, which is, so you have the cash flow, which is the Bitcoin coming out on the other end. So if you compare ROI, it's like ROI is a lot longer if you're going to be purchasing property and then, trying to get that ROI over time from rent compared to miners, where miners kind of ROI between, it depends on if it's a bull market or not, but maybe it's like 18 months, maybe it's 3 years. So I think there's kind of like a big gap to fill where there's a lot of home miners, and maybe you've got a home, maybe you got a place you can plug in your miner. And then there's large miners where, like, Chad over here, where they're doing, huge facilities, but there's a huge gap in between, and Compass kind of like fills that gap where it's kind of democratizing mining. If you're in an apartment and you want to contribute to the network, you can plug in and go to a co-location facility and do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, we kind of have like the big, large scale industrial operations. We have some industrial operations where people are able to mine as individuals by co-locating their miners. And of course, like there's caveats to that. It's kind of like not your keys, not your coins, not your, miners, not your hash, like if you don't have physical possession. But there's a middle ground, and it's kind of like the Wild West, and it's all being figured out. But then we have Michael here with Lion Show Cap, and you're looking to kind of have like a smaller industrial scale mining facility that really brings it to the community on a different scale than, like, say, what Riot is doing.
Yeah, I would say that first off, you described it well. It's market segmentation, right? And back to what you originally said, and Chad said, anybody can start. I started with one of these in the garage as well 2 years ago. I bought it on eBay for $150. I figured out how to do it, proof of concept, and then I took some more money and invested in some more. If that's your retail market, then you go to the commercial side. So you step up a little bit and you start measuring in petahash instead of terahash. And then I partnered with Compass for some of that. I also host some here locally. So I stepped into the commercial market. Now I'm moving into the smaller industrial, not quite to the large industrial, the 100 megawatt plus, but we're looking at 3 to 5 megawatts with our with 3 to 5 containers full of water cooled miners. But what we're doing is taking a slightly different approach with the community. We really believe in the decentralized approach of Bitcoin and taking that in all aspects of life and how we can revitalize small communities. So what I like to say is we're revitalizing Main Street America, and we're going to create localized Bitcoin economies powered by Bitcoin mining. I was inspired, my team was inspired by the story of Bitcoin Beach. And I think probably most people here know this, but for those of you that don't, Bitcoin Beach started with one man that was a surfer that went down there and just fell in love with the community. And he volunteered and wanted to bring up that economy. And then one gentleman that is anonymous and donated some Bitcoin to him as long as he would create a circular economy there. So he did it. This was in 2019 that they started it. Fast forward 2 years, in between there, you drive all of this Bitcoin tourism, people from all over the world wanting to come to see this fun experiment of what Bitcoin can do. Fast forward, Jack Mullers was there, is inspired to build Strike in El Salvador. And then you get Nayib Bukele inspired by all of that as well. So one community of 3,000 people with one man driving this to be able to build and influence 6 million people to be able to adopt Bitcoin in their everyday life. And what we want to do is take the exact same approach. And I think that anybody that's doing mining can do this and go to small communities and pockets and build these experimental economies to be able to get localized businesses to be able to adopt, and then be able to push some of the mining rewards back into the community to subsidize the usage of it and to be able to help education.
Hell yes. Yeah, that is the story. It's bottom up, grassroots, doesn't have to be top down, and it can be very distributed. And, you know, Chad, I do kind of want to touch on now the GigaChad, a gigawatt, right? 1,000 megawatts. You guys are moving to, Corsicana.
Correct. So we, continue on with our business model and business plan after the first 700 megawatts was constructed. Somebody made a snide comment one day. It was like, oh, well, you didn't build a gigawatt. So we went out and found a gigawatt, right? So instinctively, we found 265 acres, just 2.5 hours north of Rockdale, an hour south of Dallas at the Navarro Switch. And we were able to convince Mr. Redmond to sell us the land there after a while. And what's great is we're gonna prove our concept over again, differently, because of what we learned in Rockdale. We now, there's 204. I think there's 240 employees now in Rockdale. There's 450 plus contractors that work for us full time, and now we have a team. So there's a team going there next Tuesday. They're doing a sign up to do business with Riot. They're doing sign up to receive charitable donations from Riot, sign up to do work for Riot. And it's like teams are coming in there now because now we know exactly, like, we figured out what the concept is, right? It's really simple. And now it's like, oh, we're going to go do this again. Oh, we're going to go do it again after this. Like it's simple. And because of the relationships that we've created with different vendors and our supply chain, and then also we own our own electrical manufacturing company, we have been able to secure all of the parts we need for another gig and some change. I need something to do.
Yeah, just a gig and some change.
So it's Tuesday.
A gig in like 300 megawatts or 500 megawatts.
Yeah. But it's also a lot of fun, right? This is probably the greatest time in my life. So it's just a blast. Like, this is a blast. I love this stuff.
Yeah, if you guys haven't gone on a tour, you should.
You seem to be good at this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's like the secret sauce,
right? That's the secret sauce, that stuff back there.
Like the work that goes into actually constructing these things and making sure it works properly?
Actually, it's different. I think my value is that I convince people to do extraordinary things, and they have no idea they can do it. I just tell them every day, you are the greatest person that does this task. And then one day they start believing it. I was like, wow, that only took me 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what's the barrier? What's the problem? How would I answer that question? How would I make that decision? And then they just start doing it. I'm like, I'll always support you, even if it's the wrong one and it's a disaster. I'll never tell anybody. We'll sit behind closed doors and we'll solve it together.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you touched on it just a little bit, but I could maybe tell the story, but you could tell it better. The Alcoa plant. Rockdale's a town of 5,000 people. I think it was at least 10% of their jobs were from that plant, and it was effectively shut down or whatever. You roll in there, and if you want to take it from there.
So I think, so there's, when we came to Rockdale, there's 5,504 people in the little sign that I would drive by every day. And when Alcoa shut down in 2005, most people don't really know this real story behind it. So in 2005, Alcoa and Luminant, which was across the street, the power plant, were in a disagreement with one another. And Alcoa had to pull power off the grid. The power price went insane. And there was like a 48-hour window where they burned through about $60 million in cash on power. And it was like, shut the place down, shut it down immediately. And there's actually, you can go read about the lawsuit. It's actually pretty interesting between Luminant and Alcoa. Well, then ultimately Luminant closed. And so you had two companies in a small town in a county that only has 25,000 people that employed directly combined together, I think 3,300 people. And then of the secondary jobs, I think it was, maybe 30% of the entire population of that region. And they closed and went away like overnight and wrecked the entire town. And so when we show up, they're like, we had already had a barrier to cross because a company was there before us, one of the mining manufacturers, and they promised 400 jobs. They promised all these things and they didn't do it. And so when we showed up, they're like, don't you dare say something you won't do. I was like, no problem. I was like, anytime I said I'm going to do the following, I'd make myself a note. I was like, I have to do that. If I don't do it, these people will never get anywhere. And so then we just slowly started, realizing that if we could get the tax abatement and the sales tax credits, it's cheaper. Now we're mining Bitcoin.
There's the real sound of an S9.
That's mining Bitcoin, by the way.
That's why I can't have it in the garage anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's mining Bitcoin. But instinctively, what happened is we determined that it was less expensive to hire people than to pay the taxes. So we were like, oh, well, we'll just donate constantly. Oh, we'll just hire more people. We'll keep hiring people. We keep hiring people. And if we don't have to pay the tax, we'll use the money that we'd pay the tax, put it to jobs. Those jobs will then create something much more valuable than that. And we do lots of third-party studies about the what we've done in Rockdale so we could replicate it again. And, a 700 megawatt facility, when you build it and then you fill it with jobs, has a $700 million to $1 billion economic impact over 10 years. And that's like Bitcoin money. That's like real money. Like, it's real money. Like, there's a little restaurant in town when I first got there called the Piano Bar, and no, there's not a piano in it. Yes, it's a metal building and it all needs new decor. And we would go in there because we always knew we could sit down and eat. Like, we would go from the office to there, then we lived in a barn for a while. And yeah, we lived in a barn, and like a real barn, not a bougie Instagram barn. So let's get this really clear. Like a real barn. Like, I opened my bedroom door and there was a tractor parked on the other side. 3 of us lived in this barn. But what was interesting is, like, now you have to ask for reservations. Like they have grown. Like, there's so much more business in Rockdale today. And it's because of Bitcoin, because there's, also bit deers out there. I mean, there's literally, it's awesome because it's the last place on earth you would think to go is Rockdale, Texas. Trust me.
Oh, yes. So, okay. So I want to zoom in a little bit more. So you're focused on the, doing it at scale. You do it really well. There are opportunities where you go to a farmer or a rancher that has a gas well on their property where they're just flaring gas. And there's massive opportunities there as well. I guess if you have any kind of thoughts on that, Parker. I mean, I know there's Great American Mining that goes around. Like, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I'll answer that, but I'm going to pivot back because I got a question for Chad. But I think that, kind of for people that aren't as familiar with mining, Chad and Riot are mining on the grid. That provides significant benefits to the grid for the reasons that I was describing before, because there's a number of producers that are putting power on the grid and they're pulling the power off the grid, and then they can basically shut down their use to alleviate where there are stresses in the grid and in high demand periods like now when it's 100 degrees. There are also ways to mine off grid. So on grid, kind of the same infrastructure that's providing us power is providing Riot power, but then there's also companies like Giga who are building containers that are basically specifically built to house S9s, S19s, and you can just take that container, just like a shipping container, megawatt, put it on a well site, get a gen set or a generator. Giga makes generators, and actually convert natural gas right there on the well to generate power and mine Bitcoin and connect to a pool. That all the work is done on site, and that requires very little data transmission. That you're not moving a bunch of data back and forth. And so I think both on-grid operators and off-grid operators solve two different problems. On-grid, I view it as solving a problem of delivering energy to mass markets, given the peaks and troughs of energy demand is a highly complex problem. And then on the other side, there's stranded energy. There's energy that would otherwise not be economical to build a pipeline to a power plant or to a processing plant to then generate into power via combined cycle turbine. And so, I view those as two problems. On the one hand, it's how do we distribute energy in a broad map to a lot of people that have that energy move significantly depending on how hot or cold it is. And on the other side, we just have energy that's out there that, there might be a well that's unfinished or that's capped that could otherwise be harvested. And so I view it as two different problems, and but two different problems that Bitcoin can solve. The question I wanted to come back to ask Chad is that, one of the reasons that I've gotten so interested in Bitcoin mining in the energy side is not only because it secures the Bitcoin network, but energy security is very important to us in the United States, in Texas, and there's going to be a fight over proof of work, I view. I saw something today, again, just a rumor that the Biden administration was working on, preparing not necessarily legislation, but some sort of order to try to rein in energy consumption that goes to Bitcoin mining. And it just so happens that the state of Texas will, in my view, be the most critical venue in the entire country to defend Bitcoin, because energy is strategic to the state of Texas. Energy is strategic to Bitcoin, therefore Bitcoin is strategic to the state of Texas. And one of the things that Chad told me, I don't know if it was a few weeks ago or a month ago when we talked, where he's like, you gotta focus on this. Like, I'll go in and be like, no, it's the sound money. Sound money. You gotta understand Bitcoin for the sound money. It's like, no, this is real infrastructure. These are real jobs. This is real tax revenue. And the thing that I think is so great about Rockdale is not only is it an incredible case study in its own right, and that it's just getting started. The economic impact will just continue to emanate out of the center of this mine, and that they'll go replicate it, but that it provides the people at ERCOT, and then in terms of the grid stabilization, but then people in the legislature seeing the economic impact. Jeff Sessions, who is the U.S. House of Representative for that region, seeing what it's doing, and that connects with people in a legislature, the jobs, the tax revenue, the economic development more so than Bitcoin is sound money. And so, what I wanted, Chad, you to describe, you guys organized a meetup out in Rockdale. Brett, who runs a fine establishment there, a barbecue place in Rockdale, had a meetup a few weeks ago. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about how you guys are engaging the local community around Bitcoin and the economic development, because I think it's both of those things, because you're going to go use it in Corsicana as well. But I believe that these two case studies, Rockdale and Corsicana, will be critical markers for the legislature to then, in a state versus federal, when the federal government wants to come in and say that the energy use of Bitcoin is bad, that it will be the Texas legislature and the Texas governance structure that helps protect Bitcoin. So I just love to hear kind of how you think about all the different things that you're doing to develop the community aspects of it beyond just the economic development.
No, absolutely. Those are all really good points. You're very articulate in your thought process always, and I appreciate that. And I think some of the things that you point out is that, you read the Biden thing and you're like, is it, hot air? And then, like, is it somebody just trying to grab onto a topic that people can, get behind and hate, which of course they always can. But I think in Texas, it's a little bit different. A lot of people don't pay attention, but I don't know how many people in here realize that we're at 40.7% renewable energy in the grid now. I mean, like, there, right? You can, every one of you can look it up. It's really simple. You Google ERCOT fact sheet, the month and the year, and you can read what the percentages are. And I think the reason why that's important is because every single person in this room has the opportunity to, use that tool when, because each one of us at some point in our lives come across somebody that argues that, the case of, you're killing the environment. You're like, oh, actually, this is what's taking place. And so when you're able to convince these smaller rural counties, very similar to what you were making reference to, that, hey, this is actually really good for you. And then so through our team in California, they developed let's do a Bitcoin meetup at Brett's Barbecue. Brett's is on like the top 25 list in Texas, and just actually, he's the only Bitcoin mayor and a barbecue owner, right? So
that accepts Bitcoin.
Yeah, that accepts Bitcoin. He literally got sick and tired of like small town politics. And I remember he sent me text. He's like, I think I'm gonna run for mayor. I was like, well, you might as well. And he like walked across the street and registered. And he's like, I'm a citizen in Texas. I can't sit here. And then when I was like, hey, I really think you should do this, I really think you should accept Bitcoin. There's this event that Riot wants to do. And of course, we're going to use this technology that make it happen. And he was like, yeah, I think it's something I need to do. I don't really understand it. I was like, you don't need to understand it. It's that mindless. But what's important is, I'm like, there's huge communities that will come in and support you. And then I remember, like, I walked in and he was like, he's looking at it on his like app or his phone or whatever. He's like, man, I have Bitcoin. I was like, I have Bitcoin, and these people, I gave them barbecue, and I was like literally, that's how this happened. And so what's interesting is that because now he's going around saying, hey, I'm accepting Bitcoin. And he's like, hey, I'm accepting Bitcoin. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was. And it was easy for people to do. And so what we're starting to see is, Sessions. I spend a lot of time with him. I spend a lot of time with any government official that'll listen to me. Like, they say I'm coming on a Sunday at 10 p.m. I'm like, I will be there standing there with you. Because ultimately what happens is with Sessions, he walked in. I don't know how he originally got there, but if I'm not mistaken, the county judge was running for re-election, and he was gonna, I hate to say it, he was gonna lose because he was older and like a new young guy, and like the new young guy had all the friends. And so Sessions had come there to support him, and he walks in the building that has the immersion behind us, wherever it is in that video, and he looks around, he's like, who are all these people? And I was like, those people, those are voters. And literally it was like, in his head, he was like, let's make a video. And that's when he realized, he was like, I'm like, oh, these are real jobs. And like, he started walking around and, there's like, oh, what did you do before? I was an auto mechanic. What are you doing now? They trained me how to like work on the miners. He's like, seriously? And there's like, yeah, let me show you. He's on his laptop and he's like, and so that's what started happening, is that it became this infectious thing where people now are embracing it at a much faster rate than I believe a small community ever would. And now there's other businesses that want to take it. And so because they want to take it, it's a great opportunity to like prove why it's so valuable. And then the infrastructure side is an invaluable asset to the grid. And I'm getting text messages. There was an occurrence in the Encore transmission grid tonight when I got here. Well, that means that Encore had a problem. Our facility ran its problem for hours because they had things tripping and they had wrong frequencies set. But our facility, because we monitor it so closely, we were offloading power so those consumers and residential homes could keep their lights on.
Encore owns the transmission.
Encore. So if anybody doesn't know much about the power, right? So you see the big power lines, that's transmission. And then in that video that I made the other day, I talked about the 4 CP events, right? So June, July, August, and September, they ask you, the ERCOT and the transmission providers literally ask you to curtail your power every day. It's around 3 o'clock when it starts heating up, from 3 to about 6, 3 to 7. For that, you're rewarded by a less transmission cost for the year. So at scale, it's very, very, you want it, like, and it's like, 0.04 of a cent, but you can do math. 0.04 of a cent at big numbers is a lot of money, but they're rewarding you for turning your power off. And so our first year, we turned off 72 times for 254 hours. Those things are why it's easy for Bitcoin mining to have a good social presence, is because everybody realizes now you cannot be economically efficient unless you are participating in the 4 CPs, unless you're participating in demand response, controlled load response. Like all these ancillary services are so critical to running your business profitably, but it's more critical to the grid. I think May 31st had its peak power, highest peak power ever at 71.8 gigawatts in May, and it's never happened. And it's been a record almost every single day of energy usage, and it's because Texas has grown exponentially. And so they actually need what I call virtual power plants. People that within a click of a button can offload their power.
Yeah, and if you think about like a hospital can't just turn down. A Samsung plant can't just shut down. Like the economic value that's destroyed at a moment's notice, particularly in the middle of a day, that just can't happen, because the needs of most end energy demand, whether it's a consumer or for productive reasons, their demand for energy is acute. It's one small cog in a much larger process. And when you think about Bitcoin mining, you can think about individual miners, but the actual demand is the Bitcoin network. So it's one aggregate source of demand with a lot of distributed suppliers, such that if one shuts down in any part of the world, it doesn't screw up the overall functioning of the Bitcoin network. And that large scale and flexible nature of it, where it is a lot easier to not only shut down a Bitcoin mine than any other business in America, but it's also a lot easier to shut down a Bitcoin mine than it is a power plant.
I think there's one more thing to say to that too. It's not just the flexibility, but because this Bitcoin mining infrastructure is being built, it's causing demand for more energy generation.
Correct.
And
yeah, absolutely.
Because we have that extra energy generation, we can turn it down and supply more and balance out the grid. And that's kind of what you call stabilizing the grid, right? I don't think I ever hear anybody talk about what that actually means and how much it actually drives, but it's extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like what I would say, like I'm always about, look, this is kindergarten. You show you tell and you talk about it, but whenever it comes time to showing it, like you guys are showing legislators, Pete Sessions, is that, yeah, it's like, oh, this is real. Yeah, you've been shown. We've talked about it a hell of a lot. But once you see it, Brett's Barbecues, except Bitcoin, like, I have Bitcoin now. Whoa, he's walking around with all these people that weren't Bitcoiners, just people that he knows in town. And he's over here like, yeah, so like now he's starting to like evangelize. He's over here like, yeah, so Bitcoin is like, he's like, hey, Michael, what's that Satoshi thing you were telling me about with like and I'm like, oh, yeah, I got you. Like,
And
100
they tell
pennies in a
two
dollar,
friends.
100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin.
And they tell two friends. And they tell two friends.
Exactly.
This is one of the key points I wanted to bring up tonight.
Yeah.
And, I've got to credit Kyle Murphy on this one. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that he was in a debate about the value of Bitcoin. What is the true value of Bitcoin? And this other party that he was debating was it's all about the fundamentals, the fixed asset at 21 million, all the different talking points we talk about. He made the point, it's the community. It doesn't have any value unless the community adopts it. Now, I totally agree with him. However, I think it's the combination of both. But that community, the adoption, the increase in adoption is what's going to increase the valuation of Bitcoin over the long run. So everything that we're doing to be able to create that network effect one by one, Red's Barbecue, Caldwell, Kansas, where we're going to set up a localized Bitcoin economy, all of these different things and scaling out, that is going to create that network effect. And then we can go and do what Facebook, Twitter, all of the others did, where they proved the concept of the network effect creating value.
Absolutely. And I think this is really, critically important too. I mean, you have like China goes, oh, hey, we're banning Bitcoin mining, right? Russia, like, oh, hey, because of the, I'm totally drawing a blank on the word, but they're like, hey, yeah, you can't do business with Russia anymore, right? The sanctions. Boom, shut down all that stuff, right? One of the ways to prevent that from happening and that, legislators just like driving into a brick wall is like to show them, right? We can't always assume that they're just like malicious. They need to be shown, like everybody needs to be shown, right? So that's just kind of my 2 cents. I think what is happening here now with businesses accepting it and you making a tangible impact at the local level through Bitcoin mining, both on the grid and then a social impact and a community impact, that's driving productive legislation, let's say.
You talked about, I can't give the stats, so you're gonna have to give it, but in that period after the COVID lockdown, what the tax revenues were in Rockdale, like year over year when all other economic activity was collapsing.
So it was interesting because like I tracked it like on a regular basis. Some of the things that we did, because I became friends with all these people that own these businesses and the restaurants and whatnot. And so I was like, well, I always ask myself in the third party, I was like, well, what would Chad Harris do? I was like, I'm going to take full page ads out for every restaurant that says, here's how you order from them. And I called restaurants like, do you have a website? I don't have a website. I'll get somebody to build it for you. Do you take orders online? I don't take orders online. I'll get somebody to teach you how to take orders online. And
do you accept Bitcoin?
Yeah, I didn't look. It's baby steps here. If you don't have a website, it's like baby steps here. Like they can barely read text messages.
I know a guy that can help.
Yeah, exactly. And so like as it went along, all of a sudden, like I started tracking the sales tax revenue and Rockdale. And in like the worst month, because I tracked like all the surrounding ones, and the worst month, towns were down like 50%, and Rockdale was up 25% over their best month ever. And then I was like, interesting. And we were buying tons of stuff, so that always helped. But I tracked it for about 2.5 years, and they have been never less than 15% month over month over their best months, and the county has been 54% month over month. And it does help if you're buying $30 million worth of stuff, right? Every month, just stuff. But some of that stuff never gets taxed because of where we are. We're outside of the county. Only some of it gets taxed. But ultimately, they put new roads in, and any time that we had the opportunity, I think there's probably my most fun thing that I've done is I shoot fireworks off for the the graduating seniors. I hire a full like 4th of July team to come in, and that's worth watching.
Yeah, and I think that there is that secondary effect where, I mean, Rockdale's a town of 5,000 people.
Yep.
240 full-time employees around that area, about 300 to 400 contractors.
Yep.
And if you think 700 people in a 5,000 person town, and they may not all be in the town, but they're in the surrounding area, that those jobs are real. And so there's one side of it, which is how it is perceived around the state and in the legislature and what that will mean, and the economic development. But then as it relates to the town itself, that even those that aren't employed by Riot are seeing that, hey, all, like my neighbor down the street, they're employed by Riot and they're a Bitcoin miner. And then when they see Brett's Barbecue, now the mayor, accepting Bitcoin and a bunch of people coming in from Austin and Houston to support the local community, they're inclined to say, maybe I should look into this as well. And that I don't necessarily understand Bitcoin, but this Bitcoin mine is revitalizing this small town in Texas. And then the next community, the Corsicanas, the Chad Harris hate list is getting smaller, but when they can see that case study, then they will be less resistant to say, build a gigawatt mine right in my town, because I saw what happened in Rockdale. And if Rockdale was hard to convince, they've actually seen it, and they might still get pushed back and be concerned, and it's still always new. But those case studies become really important, not just to use to go to the state legislature and make the case there, but for other cities to say, yeah, we're open for business too. Bring your next mine to our rural community.
You touched on something that I forget to talk about all the time, and I think it's important because it's the secondary. It's called the secondary benefit. So in 2020, at the time we were still really Whinstone, we won the state secondary benefit award for economic development. And ultimately what that means is that, if you have a net effect of 700 to 900 people that you are directly employing and or through contracting, you create 2,305 additional jobs. Your payroll, our payroll is $10 million a month. $10 million a year. That payroll has a secondary benefit in that area of like $38 additional million. And those are the things that actually matter, and it's good paying jobs and healthcare and, 401ks and vacation. And, the stories of employees buying their first car, buying their first house, sending their kid to college for the first time. Like, I have hundreds of them, but I think ultimately, having the opportunity to come here and share these stories and hear like your input and, obviously what we need to do as a group is we need to be stewards in a community, and we need to figure out ways to communicate to people that is not adversarial. It's welcoming, and it's creating the opportunity for them to learn rather than, having a tone of like, oh, well, you just don't understand. But if you can find the way to bridge those gaps, this industry will be the industry, to work in, the industry, that changes the world, which it already is, and the industry that everybody wants to be attached to. I see it. I close my eyes. I've told you numerous times, I close my eyes and I see it, and I see how to get there. And so we just have to be really good stewards so that we can take it along.
Yeah, and the really beautiful thing about that is that, like, different Bitcoin miners, even though they're competing, like, they are working together to secure the network and now empowering communities, right? That's the interesting thing about Bitcoin, is that, yes, it's competitive, but it's not competitive. Like, we're all mining Bitcoin and they're making Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin network is distributing that Bitcoin every block that gets mined, but it's making the network more powerful, more secure, more robust, while simultaneously, again, building out the grid, giving people energy or more energy than they would have otherwise had, not just in the United States, not just in Rockdale, all over the world, right? So I think it's probably, we could talk all night. It's probably about time to kind of wrap it up. If you guys have any closing thoughts, like Take it away.
I got a closing thought. So the if you take the blueprint of what Chad's doing and you extrapolate that out to like all the aluminum smelting plants that are closed down across the United States, maybe across everywhere else, and you start building out those communities, and you spend more than 10 seconds reading a headline that says Bitcoin consumes too much energy. Bitcoin is then revitalizing the communities. It's then creating a new way in which you can load balance and create a more secure grid. And then on top of that, it's actually allowing people to own their own money and own their own property. So I think it's bigger than just the headline that says Bitcoin consumes too much energy. And I think I appreciate you guys contributing to that.
Yeah, I guess just to wrap up, I would say, I think Chad's point about being a good steward couldn't have been more spot on, and that we'll often joke here in Austin about how it's a half truth. It's true actually, but the Austin's the Bitcoin capital of the world, which it is. But we want Bitcoin everywhere, and that it's important that we support not just our local community here in Austin, but also the local communities around Central Texas, around the state, other parts of the country, other parts of the world. But the highest impact we can have here as living in Austin is around Central Texas and around the state. And so I believe, and I'll just leave with this, I believe the Riot team is going to try to do the Brett's Barbecue meetup once a month. And I don't know if they're going to do a tour once a month, but maybe we can negotiate that too. But I would just say, come out and support that. Rockdale's only an hour away. It's a lot of fun getting outside the city, sitting under some pecan trees, eating barbecue, hanging out with Bitcoiners who come from Houston and Austin. And we'll continue to help that community embrace Bitcoin and move it forward and meet a lot of great people and help advance Bitcoin.
I'll leave you with this. Using energy is good for our world. That's it. Not one single person would be standing here if we were not using energy. Not anything you wore, how you got here, the lights, the food you eat. Energy usage is great for our economy and great for just everything. Yeah, for humanity.
Spoken like a true Texan.
Hell yeah.
I think I have two thoughts. One, real quick, anybody can do this. You guys saw. Pick one up. They're not that expensive. Get one and try it out, test it out. Anybody can do it. Number two, the network effect is real. So everything you learned tonight, if you learned anything from us, tell two friends.
All right. Hell yes. Thank you guys so much for, first of all, everyone for showing up here today. Thank the panelists. Another round of applause for them. This was awesome. This is being live streamed. I think we got 20,000 sats just donated. Super cool. We have several $100s over there with the raffle. Last call for that. So if you like what you've heard, if you want to get involved, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, plug in one of these miners. Do it safely before you plug it in. Look up, consult with an electrician, whatever. Just look up some shit. But generally, these are fine.
I got a quick announcement before we break. Okay, so everyone knows Bitcoin Plus is next week. There's going to be a hackathon here Thursday, Friday of next week. And then after the hackathon, so it's a Pleb Lab hackathon. And then after the hackathon, maybe partly coinciding with the announcement of the winners, we're going to have a happy hour here. Not for consensus, but for the Bitcoiners that are in Austin and all Bitcoiners that want to come. So just put that on your radar. And then the next day, we're going to do an event with Alex Gladstein here at the Bitcoin Commons, I believe 4 p.m. 4 p.m. to 5:30 we'll be programming with an educator, an Afghani educator who is going to come in. I think Alex Gladstein is going to do a fireside chat, and then we'll have a Q&A. So that'll be from 4 to 5, and then Q&A from 5 to 5:30, and then we'll do a happy hour here on Saturday. So Friday, post hackathon champion winner circle happy hour, or whatever we're going to call it, something other than happy hour. But and then the next day, we're going to do HRF event followed by cocktails.
All right. And again, guys, last call on the raffle tickets. Also, next Thursday in Round Rock, there's going to be a Bitcoin meetup. Okay, so check it out. The small community ones are really awesome. Okay, so check it out. Oh, one more.
One more Lightning Developers Meetup is here next Wednesday, too.
Yes, come for that. And for everyone watching the stream, thank you so much.